All right, let's talk about the properties of exponents. Specifically, what if the exponent is 0? Okay. For example, 5 to the 0th equals what? What does it equal? Okay. Let's also talk about what if the exponent is negative. For example, 5 to the negative third. What does that equal? And lastly, let's talk about what if the exponent is a fraction. For example, 5 to the 1/4. What does that equal? Okay, we're going to talk about these three properties, and at the end of this lesson, hopefully, you'll know what to do if the exponent is 0, if the exponent is negative, or if the exponent is a fraction. All right, so let's take a look at what we already know. We know that exponents mean repeated multiplication. So 2 to the 4th means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Now I've got a couple of these 1s in here, and you'll see why, but multiplying by 1 doesn't change anything. So 2 to the 4th is 16. 2 times 2, 4, 8, 16 times 1, all divided by 1 is still 16, okay? But what happens as we move from 2 to the 4th to 2 to the 3rd? Well, we can think of 2 to the 3rd as just 2 times 2 times 2. Or we can think of it like this, taking 2 to the 4th, and how do we get from 2 to the 4th to 2 to the 3rd? Well, we got to get rid of one of those 2, so we divide by 2. And that leaves us with 2 times 2 times 2. In other words, 2 to the 3rd. All right? Well, to get from 2 to the 3rd to 2 to the 2nd, I'm going to divide by another 2. All right, and that leaves us with 2 times 2, which is 4. Maybe another way of thinking about this is how do we get from 16 to 8? Well, from here to here, we divide by 2. And from 8 to 4, we divide by 2. And so another way of dividing by 2 is putting another 2 on the denominator, dividing by an additional 2. And so when we get to 2 to the 1st, I've got my 2's that cancel, and we just have 2 to the 1st. Okay, we divided by an additional 2. So here we are at our first essential question. What do we do with 2 to the 0th? Well, we do the same thing we've been doing. We divide by 2. And so what's 2 divided by 2? That's just 1. Okay, so if we go by our expanded version here, we had 2 to the 4th originally. We divided by a 2. Divided by 2, divided by 2, and divided by 2 again, and we're left with 1 over 1, which is just 1. And so if we keep this pattern going, we get into our second essential question. What do we do if they're negative? Well, we've been dividing by 2 every time, so let's keep that pattern going. Divide by 2. What's 1 divided by 2? It's 1/2. And if you think about it, these all cancel. But because we divided by an additional 2, there's another 2 on the bottom. And so we've got 1 divided by 2, which gives us our 1/2. Okay, we'll keep that going. Let's just see if this pattern holds true. Divide by 2 again. What's 1/2 divided by 2? It's 1/4. So how could we show that here? Well, I'm going to divide. I was already dividing by 2. Now I'm dividing by an additional 2. And 2 times 2 gives us 4, and we have our 1 on the top. Okay, 1/4. And to get from here to here, we divide by 2 again. And so that gives us 1/8. And to get from here to here, we divide by 2, which gives us 1/16. Now I bring this up, or our list is so long because I want us to notice something. Do you see a connection from here to here? Well, 2 to the positive 4th is 16 because there's 4 2's on the top. 2 to the negative 4th is 1 over 16 because all those 2's are now on the bottom. And we should notice that 3 matches with negative 3. It's a fraction, but it's 8 on the bottom. Okay, 2 to the 2nd versus 2 to the negative 2nd, it's 4 and 1/4. It's 1, or excuse me, to the 1st is 2, and it's 1 over 2. So, what happens when the exponent is 0? Well, when it's 0, it's always just going to be 1. So, 5 to the 0th is 1. Okay, anything to, what do we do with a negative exponent? A negative exponent, well, that would be 5 to the third, but it's going to be on the bottom, right? So it makes it a fraction. All right, now what do we do if the exponent is a fraction? Well, we know that this would be between 0 and 1, but we're going to rewrite this as a radical. Okay, 4 to the first, and this 2 is going to be our square root. So in other words, it's the square root of 4, which we know is 2. In your calculator, you type in the 4, you use this little symbol, you use parentheses 1 over 2, and then close your parentheses. All right, so 4 to the 1/3 would be the same as 4 to the first, and we're looking for the cubed root. The cubed root of 4, we don't really know it, so we would just leave it as the cubed root of 4. All right, so what do we do when there's a fractional exponent? The 1 it goes here. The bottom part of your fraction, that is your root. All right. So what happens when the exponent is 0? What happens when the exponent is negative? And what happens when it's a fraction? We know that when it's 0, it's always equal to 1. When it's negative, we turn it into a fraction. And when it's a fractional exponent, we use roots. Thanks.